So with UFC 300 on the horizon here soon in about 6 months time, I thought to myself, I had the best idea of all time and decided to do a complete card builder for you guys. I'll only do the main card because 6 months time from now is kind of difficult to predict. In a sense, it's going to be hard for me to do the whole entire card, but I think the main card is where the money is going to be made. So I decided to get my brain working and get into the lab and figure out how can we make UFC 300 one of the best cards of all time just with the main card. I have 5 fights for you guys. I'm going to go through each one individually and reveal them one by one as we go throughout the video. So strap in, get ready, and let's go. All right, so as you can see, we have 5 black boxes lined up. I know it's kind of tacky, but it's the best way I could figure out how to do this and make it a somewhat cohesive video, whatever the word would be for it. But we have 5 black boxes lined up for you. I'm going to reveal each fight, starting with the main event, one by one. Again, it's fairly simple. You should be able to get the grasp of it fairly quickly. So let's not waste any more time and dive right into it. Starting with the main event, we have Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilya Topuria in the main event. I was contemplating putting Volkanovski versus Makhachev in here, but I just don't think that it would really line up well for the featherweight division if we don't just go ahead and get this Volkanovski versus Topuria matchup out the way and ready to go. There are literally no more contenders left at featherweight. And if Volk kind of just skips over Topuria and goes for the Makhachev rematch, if Makhachev does beat Oliveira, then it would kind of screw things up with the whole featherweight division. I mean, we have Max Holloway, pretty much the only guy left that could challenge Volk, and he's already fought him 3 times and lost. So it's kind of like, where do we go from here? If we don't do this matchup now, then Topuria has to sit out for like another 9 months at least, at the very, very least, another 9 months waiting for his title shot versus Volkanovski. So at this point, we have really nothing going on at featherweight and no new title challengers. And we don't want to see Topuria sit out and fight who for an interim belt, I guess? Nobody. We don't want him fighting Max Holloway for an interim belt because he needs to be out of the title picture completely at featherweight. So it's literally nobody for Volk at featherweight unless it's Topuria. And we do not want him sitting out for God knows how long. So we have to do this now. I'm sorry. I do want to see the Makhachev fight, and I think this will make this a bigger card if we did see Makhachev versus Volk in the main event. But I just don't see how we can move on with featherweight if Topuria versus Volk doesn't happen. There's actually nobody left. Think about it. There's Topuria. There is Yair, who just lost to Volk. There's Holloway, which, again, we can't have him anywhere near the title picture. Emmett, I think, is in the top 5. Brian Ortega hasn't fought in literally forever, and his last fight was against Yair Rodriguez, where he lost by arm injury or submission. Depends on how you see the fight. But there's actually nobody at featherweight that can at least carry on the legacy of fighting Topuria for an interim belt if we go ahead and go with Volk versus Makhachev. So it has to be Topuria now. It sucks, but that's the way things have to be, or else featherweight is completely dead, and we can't have that. But moving on, up next in our co-main event, it's going to be Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. Screw Israel Adesanya. We don't need him having another rematch. I'm sorry. When you've already lost, then you won again, and now you lost again, you don't really deserve a rematch. And so Sean Strickland right now has been incredibly active. He needs some time off. Du Plessis is coming off an injury. He needs a little bit more time off as well. And I think UFC 300 kind of fits well with the timeline of having both these guys come back and fight each other. And this will be a huge fight. Obviously, if you wanted to do Dricus du Plessis versus Adesanya, you could do that just as a title elimination bout. That would be fine to me as well, but I would rather have this go out the way. There's nobody really left that could really have a big fight with Sean Strickland. I mean, Whitaker just lost to du Plessis, and then we have Adesanya in the rematch, and we don't want to see that rematch between Strickland and Adesanya, so we might as well do du Plessis. And if Adesanya can come back and get a rebound win, then we can have du Plessis, if he does beat Sean Strickland, of course. We can have du Plessis versus Adesanya, and then we have like a whole cycle of just fun fights between Strickland, Adesanya, du Plessis, Adesanya. Big fights are on the horizon for middleweight. So Right now, I think it makes the most sense to have Strickland versus Duplessis first, and then we move on with Adesanya later down the line. But that is our co-main event. This is already shaping up to be a really good pay-per-view card with just these two as the headliners, the main event and the co-main event. But moving on to the feature fight, I think it should be Sergey Pavlovich versus Tom Aspinall. Let me explain this to you real quick. I think that John Jones and Stipe Miocic are going to retire after that fight, regardless of who wins. If John Jones wins, he's definitely probably going to retire. If Miocic wins, I mean, maybe he might come back for another fight, but I think he'll call it quits as well. I think the winner of that fight will retire at the end of the day, and we have to get moving on with the heavyweight division as soon as possible, as soon as one of them retires. We can't have Cyril Gane and Aspinall fighting each other and Sergey sitting on the sidelines. We have to get moving on with this division as quickly as possible, and I think Pavlovich versus Aspinall gets it done as quick as possible. Cyril Gane is coming off a win against Sergey Spivak. It's one win. He doesn't need to be in the title picture at all. He's 0-2 in title fights. And if they do Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane next as a title elimination bout, if Aspinall loses, that kind of screws things up with the title, because we don't want Cyril Gane fighting for a belt again because he lost dominantly to John Jones. And it just wouldn't be good for business if we had Cyril Gane become champion with John Jones retiring if he does beat Stipe. It would look bad on the division, and we kind of have to have two fresh guys who haven't been in the title picture or had a title fight yet at heavyweight. And when you have two fresh contenders, it creates a better narrative like, oh, what if this guy fought John Jones? You know, there's at least some sort of question there as to who would win between those two new contenders. And it brings some fresh air to the division. You know, there's not a big looming cloud and John Jones heaping over it when we have some new fresh faces fighting each other for the belt. It happened with Chandler versus Oliveira. It happened before, I think, in other divisions. So it's what the UFC wants to do. I think it is what they will do. And after they fight, I think at 295, I believe, it'd be, a 5-month gap between then. It lines up perfectly for 300, and adding this to this card will make it so much better in the long run. Moving on, up next, we have... Now, this one is kind of my favorite here because I want you to think about the press conference off rip. Israel Adesanya, Chimaev, Strickland, Duplessis will be absolute fireworks at the press conference. You can't tell me that it wouldn't be. Now, this one makes the most sense. I think Israel Adesanya should get the winner of Paulo Costa versus Chimaev. I picked Chimaev here because it would be a more interesting matchup, and I think he probably will win against Paulo Costa. But it's time for Adesanya to fight some up-and-comers. Let's keep it real here. It's really time for him to get the Whitaker treatment here. Whitaker had to go and fight other contenders to get his rematch against Israel Adesanya. So it's time for Adesanya to do the same thing, and he needs to fight Chimaev. And this would be a crazy fight. It'd be a big build-up. The press conference between these four guys would already be absolute fireworks. It would sell the fight. Need I say more? Right here, need I say more? This would be a great fight, obviously a great build-up, and it's what we want to see. And it sucks it's not for the title, but I think it's kind of better that it isn't. You know what I mean? Because we get to add more things to this, and this is perfect. I know people wanted to see Alex Pereira versus Yuri Prohaska on here, but I don't think it lines up well with 300. I think they'll fight before this card, so it doesn't make much sense to me. You know, Yuri's been out for so long, but I think these four right here make the most sense. I think this is the most realistic outcome in this. Now, moving on to the last fight, the main card opener, we have Ian Machado Gary versus Jack Della Maddalena. This one, you can kind of plug in any matchup you want to see here. Now, I prefer this one because Ian Gary is obviously going to talk some trash to Jack Della. And this is kind of like a striker's dream matchup. If you follow these guys throughout their career, the striking skill on display here is going to be absolutely elite at welterweight. I want to see this. This would be amazing. Now, obviously, you could probably have a lower weight, like a flyweight or a bantamweight matchup here. But I think just with these two guys, I think they'll both fight one more fight in the meantime, and then they'll come on and turn around to 300. So I think they'll both be kind of highly ranked and ready to go for this. And that just means we have more anticipation, more hype, more fun. They're going to be both kind of like, I think, somewhere between top 5 to top 10 in the rankings. It's going to be a pretty legit matchup with high stakes on it. And the winner is probably one win away from getting a title shot at welterweight if this fight does go down and if they both do get one win in the meantime before 300 happens. So, I mean, at the end of the day here, this is going to be a striker's dream. This fight's going to be fireworks. I think somebody is probably going to get finished. I don't see Ian Gary embarrassing Jack Della, and I don't see Jack Della embarrassing Ian Gary unless he gets a quick KO. But it's just going to be a super high technical fight that I think would be a great main card opener. Also, I wanted to add in here before I get out of here, I wanted to say Jim Miller will probably be on the prelim opener. So, I mean, the last fight of the prelims before the main card happens. I forget what it's called. I'm blanking real quick, but I think Jim Miller should be on here. I want to shout him out because I think he wants to be on 300. He said before, I think in a post-fight interview, about being on UFC 300. So I wanted to hype up. Maybe you can put Jim Miller on the opener of the main card here as well, because he's a big guy. He's been around the sport for forever. It's probably his retirement fight. You know what I mean? So you could probably add him in here as well. But I think that this is a great and absolutely magnificent main card. This would sell, I don't know about 1 million, but it would sell a lot of pay-per-view buys. And I think after the post-fight press conference, this would sell even more because there would be more hype behind it. This would be an amazing card. We have 3 title fights. We have Volk, Superior, Strickland, Duplessis, Pavlovich, Aspinall as your title fights. And the other 2 are Adesanya and Chimaev, and Ian Gary versus Jack Della as kind of the high stakes potential title challenger matchups. Now, this will be in a very expensive card, but it is UFC 300, so I'm not going to be, like, it's totally realistic. If you wanted to have like a really fun time with this, you could probably do Volk Makhachev. You could do Strickland Adesanya or Duplessis again. You could probably do Yuri Prohaska versus Alex Pereira. And then Adesanya versus Chimaev right there. And that would be, I mean, an even better press conference if I'm being totally honest with you. So it would be an absolute amazing card. I think the UFC, if they play their cards right, there's no way that they can mess up this card. It's going to be an absolute banger of a UFC card against the 300th one. So is what it is. But that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching this video up to this point. I surely do appreciate it. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that bell icon for notifications. I'm out of here, guys. Peace.